Good afternoon, everybody. It's David Schlotthauer here, back with another weather forecast. A pretty big extreme winter storm is likely to develop this weekend across the Midwest, into the upper Midwest and the Northeast, and even the eastern seaboard, bringing significant problems such as inches of ice, inches of rainfall, and potentially a couple of feet of heavy snowfall across the northern end of the storm system, followed with some severe weather down across the south. And then we really need to talk about the Arctic outbreak that is expected for much of next week, as wind chill values could dip to as low as -30 to -50 degrees below zero. So now let's take a look at this storm system that is expected to become extreme and powerful on the Euro model. This is for Saturday morning on the ECMWF, which stands for European Center for Medium Range Weather Forecasting, and this is on the 4th day of January 2025. And what we're looking at here is the Midwest sector. And what we have here is a little bit of some snow that does develop across the Dakotas, including for Montana, as well as portions here of Yellowstone in Wyoming. But this is just the beginning of what will be a very intense snowstorm and winter storm across much of the Midwest. Let's go all the way into Saturday afternoon for your weekend here. This is right around, say, 6 p.m. Central Standard Time. And yes, we are starting to see this pink blow up here. This is freezing rain. This is literally super cold liquid water that is below freezing, but when it hits a surface, it freezes instantaneously. So this is what that is on the radar forecast here. And then down to the south, that green is rainfall, very light rain. And then up here to the north is where you have the heavier snowfall. That's in the more darker shade of blue. But as we go forward here, it really gets nasty by the overnight hours of Saturday into Sunday. So by Sunday morning, around 6 in the morning Central Standard Time, in about 5 days from now, this system really takes off. We are looking at a pretty heavy band of freezing rain here and ice. This is going to lead to widespread power outages. We're going to have power grid failures. This is going to be one of the worst snowstorms that we have ever seen, at least in a few years, perhaps. And then on the northern end of the system, you have a lot of light to moderate snowfall. And then down to the south, there's going to be a lot of rainfall. And some of this, especially further south you go, we might see a marginal or slight risk of severe weather. So everything in one system is going to cause a lot of problems. And now by Sunday afternoon, this is around, say, 3 in the afternoon Central Standard Time and about, say, 4 p.m. In Eastern Standard Time. Look at this. This is just getting really bad. This is medium to dark pink colors. This is some moderate to heavy freezing rain accumulations in this little band right here that is stretching all the way from eastern Kansas into central Missouri, southern Illinois, southern Indiana, central southern Kentucky, as well as northeastern Tennessee. This is just big problems waiting to happen. We got some heavy snowfall on the northern side of this because the air will be cold below freezing through the deep layer of the atmosphere all the way down to the surface. So when it starts off as snow, it stays as snow down to the surface. Versus if you get freezing rain, the snow starts off, melts in the mid-levels of the lower levels of the atmosphere, right? Melts to rain, just like normal rain, and then it refreezes upon contact with the surface, like a trash can, a sidewalk, your car, your mailbox, a roof, a tree branch, a power line. And this is what causes power outages, because you add all that ice up, imagining 2 inches of ice per square inch. That's what we're talking about here, and that really puts a lot of weight on infrastructure, and that leads to a lot of problems, okay? So keep that in mind. Spin outs, car accidents, including flight cancellations, flight delays. I mean, it's just going to be miserable. Then down here to the south, where we could have a severe weather event taking place on Sunday into Monday, we'll see on how that actually pans out. Right now, there's not a whole lot of extreme directional speed shear here, but we got some speed shear to work with and some instability, so we could see at least a slight risk of severe weather on the warm sector of the system. But on the northern side, this is going to be the issue. All right, now looking towards, say, the eastern half of the U.S., yeah, the freezing rain is going to continue, and the heavy snowfall even into Maryland. In Delaware, this could be a really big problem. Some of those valley locations are really prone to that freezing rain. Going to be an issue, especially in southern portion there of Virginia, portions of western Virginia, as well as Kentucky, getting in on the freezing rain. And then by, say, Tuesday or by Monday night into Tuesday, things should calm a lot down. So it's basically from Saturday afternoon across the high plains of the Midwest, all the way across the Midwest and eventually into the western half or eastern half of the U.S. We're talking about a timeline here from Saturday all the way through Monday night is when we could be expecting a lot of the impacts. So that was the European model. What does the GFS model have to tell us? So the GFS model is a little bit slower in terms of the development of this system. If we actually go back for reference, you can see this is 21Z Saturday, 105 hours out. This is nearly the same time on the GFS, and you can see not as much freezing rain, not as much snow either, just barely any blue there. So it's a little bit on the slower side and weaker side on the GFS, the American model. But going forward, this does develop pretty substantially by Sunday morning, Sunday afternoon. And the isobars here, these are tightly packed. We're also going to be talking about some strong winds that could lead to some property damage as well. And that combined with the freezing rain, we're going to have widespread power outages, I'm thinking, across portions of Oklahoma, western portion there of Kansas, central Arkansas in this case, like Little Rock, Arkansas, could be in some serious trouble here with significant ice accumulation, ice accretion, as well as northern Mississippi, northern Alabama. This would be pretty bad, okay? And very heavy snow on the northern side of this. And this is going to continue. I mean, look at this. All the way into Sunday night, and then eventually across the eastern half of the U.S. by Monday, impacting, say, Tennessee, northern Georgia. Oh my goodness, northern Georgia, are you kidding me? Getting some freezing rain, as well as the Carolinas. Gonna expect that freezing rain accumulation threat. So this is really, really bad. This is on the extreme scale, and a lot of you are probably telling me in the comments, how is this extreme, David? It's not extreme. Well, wait until you see the snow accumulation. Wait until you see the amount of ice that this could put out. All right, because on one aspect, it is an extreme storm. We're seeing, well, massive wide power outages in these areas. We're talking about strong winds, some Arctic temperatures that are going to come in on the backside of this. We're not talking about a nor'easter here with some weather channels on YouTube saying, oh, we're going to have a historic, dangerous, deadly nor'easter in the Northeast. That's not happening in this situation. This is going to be cutting across the Midwest and then exiting out across the Carolinas and Virginia by Monday night into Tuesday. Now, one other model that I wanted to show you all is, what about the Canadian model? We're involving 3 different deterministic models in this situation because this is such a big system that everybody is wondering, well, what about this model or what about this model, right? So here it is. So this is the Canadian model. All right, and again, 105 hours out. So if we look back, let's just do this. So if we look back at 3 different models for the same time frame, you can see right about in here. Okay, so this is the Euro, this is the GFS, and now this is the Canadian. So it looks like the Canadian leaning more towards the Euro at this point with timing and development. So pretty much similar between those 2 models, although the sleet is also an outside possibility. Now, going forward, the system develops very rapidly through the overnight hours of Saturday into Sunday. You can see Sunday morning, there is a lot of pink here over Missouri, over Tennessee, northern Arkansas. Looks like most of the freezing rain here is implanted and ground zero into southern and southeastern Missouri, into Tennessee and Kentucky. And look at that snow. Look at those winds. very strong. We're going to have a lot of problems. Flight cancellations, road closures, perhaps, blizzard conditions. Yeah, we're talking extreme blizzard conditions with this system as well. And then this continues all the way through Sunday night into Monday across Kentucky, Tennessee, as well as Virginia, including for North Carolina. Man, this is just a mess. A very big, extreme, nasty winter storm. And this continues all the way into Monday across the rest of the eastern U.S., except it's a little weaker on the Canadian versus the GFS, and the Euro did indicate much more heavier snowfall across this area versus our Canadian model family, not showing a whole lot here. And this takes a little longer to exit. It takes all the way until probably Tuesday for it to fully clear out, or even Tuesday night. So a little bit on the slower end on the Canadian model, but also not as intense as far as the freezing rain accumulation goes, but still really looking at a lot of problems. So now, what about those snowfall accumulations? Everyone is curious about this system of how much snowfall could you actually see on the cold side of the system. Well, right now, early expectations are that, say, Kansas City, central Kansas, could see anywhere between about 6 to 12 inches of snow. Areas like across central and northern Missouri could see anywhere between 12 to maybe 15 inches of snow. And then, of course, across southern half of Indiana, northern Kentucky, southern Ohio, central West Virginia, as well as northern portion here of the Virginia state, you might see anywhere between, say, 12 to 18 inches of snowfall. And let's not forget up here, too, lake effect snow areas that are prone, like, say, Watertown, New York, could see up to a few feet of snowfall through the next 7 days, because that cold Arctic air is going to be moving over these warm Great Lake waters, and that's going to lead to a lot of lake effect snow production in those areas. Okay, so now what about the GFS, the American model? Well, the American GFS is way more aggressive, not as aggressive over here across the eastern seaboard, but more aggressive over, say, Tennessee, northern portion there of, say, Oklahoma, northern Arkansas. There could be a few areas here that could get 2 feet of snowfall. Yeah, 2 feet of snowfall, folks. That's a lot. That's shovelable. That's going to be road closure business, with maybe about 12 to 18 inches of snowfall across central and eastern Kansas, including for Kentucky. You might see up to about a foot. Some of the Appalachians here of, say, West Virginia might see a couple of feet of snowfall. And then, of course, your lake effect snow prone areas could see quite a bit. Now, what about the Canadian model? Well, the Canadian is also indicating anywhere between, say, 12 to 18 inches of snowfall is anticipated. Again, although those lake effect snow area, prone areas could see a few feet of snowfall out of this, including, say, up here in, say, it's like Huron, I believe. That's like Superior-ish. Okay, I gotta memorize all my lakes. There's too many of them, right? You know your lake. You know where this is. Northern Michigan, northernmost area, might see about a foot of snowfall. But yeah, Indiana, this is more northerly. So like central Indiana here on the Canadian is a possibility. So now, everyone's also wondering, what about the freezing rain? And I don't believe 1.83 inches. I don't think we'll see that much. We have to always kind of extrapolate this down a little bit. But I'll tell you what, right now, there is higher confidence that you might see up to a half of an inch of ice, maybe locally higher in some areas, especially over central and southern portions there of, say, Missouri, southeastern Missouri. Kentucky is really well prone to that. Some of the valley locations locking that colder air down to the surface. It's not able to mix out very well. So those areas could have maybe about a quarter to a half an inch of ice. And again, these localized areas here, especially in Missouri, been showing this for a while now on the Euro, possibly up to about a half an inch, maybe even 3/4 of an inch of ice. And that is enough to lead to widespread power outages, down trees, power lines, infrastructure damage as well, including, say, Kansas here might see up to about a quarter to a half an inch of ice. This is bad news, folks. And I would not be surprised if we have a mega ice storm event taking place here across the midsection of the U.S. The GFS model is a little less aggressive, but also further south. You can see many areas here like northern Alabama, northern Georgia, northern Mississippi, central Arkansas, Tennessee, as well as the Carolinas could get anywhere between about a quarter of an inch to maybe a half an inch of ice. Some localized areas like Little Rock could get up to 3/4 of an inch of freezing rain accumulation. Even so, yeah, it's 1 inch there, maybe an inch, 1.8 inches. Got to understand that it is, for one thing, hard to predict freezing rain amounts in this area because some of it does melt as it touches other ice. So that's why we kind of extrapolate this down. But up to about 3/4 of an inch of ice will be enough to lead to serious utility problems, power outages, that sort of thing. And the Canadian model here also showing a similar outcome with ice accumulations, enough to, again, lead to a lot of power outages and infrastructure damage between about a quarter of an inch to maybe a half an inch across these areas on the Canadian. But again, zeroing in on southern portion there of Missouri, like Springfield, could get up to about 3/4 of an inch of ice accumulation, enough to really cause problems. And this on top of very cold Arctic air will lead to this ice probably lasting for a while. It's not going anywhere, I'm afraid. Okay, so looking at those surface temperatures here on the Euro, and again, another concern with this will be the very cold air that filters in on the back side of this. That's what makes this winter storm extreme. Not so much historic right now. I don't think we'll be in that book like we thought yesterday, but extreme will be a new word we probably use with this system instead. And you can see, yes, colder temperatures do arrive, but not really until we get into the weekend. You can see there is your system. See this little curly Q here, where we have lots of warmer air moving north and colder air coming in on the backside. You can see where that freezing rain and ice is going to be. And look at that ice is going to accumulate here, say in central Missouri, and watch what happens. It's going to cool way down into the single digits beyond that. So this ice may not melt at all. How about that? You may be without power for a few days, as long as a week perhaps, if this ends up happening, where we don't get thawing, where we get temperatures that warm up enough to melt the ice sufficiently where it's able to slip off the roofs, slip off trees, and break on when it hits the ground. But also, if it does fall off of trees and if it's heavy enough, it can cause some serious injuries. So stay away from falling ice if you are outside under trees, because that weighs a lot. I'll tell you, 2 inches of ice per square inch really does weigh a lot. Okay, and then this is going to be a thing. Colder air moving in on the backside of this. So yeah, this is going to be a really big problem. There's not going to be any thawing out as far as what the European model shows. And looking at the wind chill values, this is even worse. How about this? Wind chill values on the backside of this could be in the negative 20 degree range in St. Louis, Missouri, in portions of the Northeast. I mean, these wind chill values are fairly extreme on the order. And look at this. Across Minnesota, North and South Dakota, wind chill values as low as negative 30 to negative 50 degrees. Negative 50 below zero. Okay, by the end of the 7 to 8 day period. So very cold air coming in out of the north here across much of the northern tier of the United States. This is very, very bad. Okay, this is something to not mess with at all, and we'll keep you updated as it gets closer. Now, as far as our temperature anomalies go really quickly, you can see that, yes, colder air arrives. This is the ensemble, all 51 different versions of the operational run. And you can see all this blue here. Green indicates temperatures that are below average. Areas in orange and red are temperatures above average. And as we go forward, you can see still colder than average. So this is on top of that freezing rain, that ice storm event. This is not going to end well. I'll tell you that right now. By January the 8th and the 9th, temperatures will be well below average through the extended period through the next 10 days. And you can clearly see it here on the Climate Prediction Center issuing a high risk for hypothermia, for record low temperatures. And this goes all the way down into central Florida, the southeastern U.S. This is mind-boggling extreme. And you look at all the moderate risk here stretching across much of the northern plains, the Great Lakes region, So yes, hypothermia, perhaps temperatures that you have not seen in nearly 5 or 10 years are a possibility across the Georgia area. This on top of, again, a moderate risk of heavy snowfall across the Great Lakes will make things even worse than ever. And let's take a look here at let's do this. You can see, let's just use the 8 to 14 day forecast with temperatures. This is pretty phenomenal. I mean, you have a 90 to 100% chance that southeastern U.S. as well as the Midwest will have well below average temperatures versus us in California. We're not standing a chance. We're going to be above average. Unfortunately, this whole flipperoo with the weather pattern. So yes, January coming in very, very cold, historically cold perhaps, on top of a extreme winter storm that could bring extreme ice accumulations, lots of snowfall in the Midwest. This is going to lead to a lot of problems. But anyways, if you found this video really helpful, detailed, and informative, please don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel to stay up to date on this particular winter storm and what comes on after that. Because of how significant this is, we will keep you updated every single slipping day here on the YouTube channel. But you could only do that if you do subscribe to the channel and enable all notifications. So you get all notifications here on the YouTube channel every time I release a video, because I'll be here every day. And if not, we may have to do 2 videos a day the day before leading up to this winter storm. But you can only do that if you do subscribe. And also hit the like button if you did enjoy the video, and also leave a comment in the section below. Let me know what your thoughts about this video are, what you want me to do to improve my content even further. As always, thank you all for watching, and I will certainly be back with you more tomorrow with another update on this nasty, nutty winter storm.